My fellow masters, the free SSR ticket is finally upon us, and I'm super hyped about it. This will be NA's first time that an SSR will be obtainable for free, so no doubt many have been looking forward to this. And if you're relatively new to the game, then this presents a great opportunity to strengthen your servant roster. So here is my overview of the possible SSR choices. Before we begin looking at the available choices, I just want to clarify a few things. This is not intended to be a comprehensive, in-depth review of each servant. More like just some key points I wanted to highlight. The recommendations I make are merely my opinion, and I will be approaching the choice under the context of what an account may need on a per-class basis. I'm sure there are many who have already decided on a specific servant for various reasons, whether they be waifu or husbando, or simply a servant they are missing for their Chaldea. As such, it's perfectly reasonable for your choice to differ from what I recommend. Definitely go with what you feel is best for you. We play FGO for fun, so making a choice that will make you happy tends to be the right one. So let's get into it. First, I'm going to start off with my universal recommendation. The 5-star support caster, Zhuge Liang, or more commonly referred to as Waver. If you find yourself lacking in strong support units, then Waver is my top recommendation. Simply put, having him will make farming more efficient and even harder difficulty content easier to handle. He just brings so much to the table, able to buff the party's attack and defense, provide a 20% charge to the party, and 50% to one specific ally. Having Waver in your roster, along with a couple of key 1-star servants like Arash and Spartacus, a support Arjuna Altar, and some CEs with a starting charge, you have yourself a fairly universal and free-to-play friendly 3-turn farming team. If you have some quick servants that have MP looping potential like at Atlanta, but no Scotty of your own, then having Waver can make up the difference for at least 2 to 3 waves. Have Arash handle wave 1, then Waver and Scotty buffing and NP gauge charging for waves 2 and 3. Something similar will work with a support Castoria and a good Arts Looper as well. And if you're a new player, then not to worry about Waver's skill levels, at least at first. Waver's MP charging effects do not scale with his skill levels, so even at skill level 1 across the board, you will have full access to his ability to charge an ally by 50%. This gives you some time to gather the needed materials to raise his skills gradually and still benefit from his MP charging. Need a crit buff? Waver's got you covered with a potent 3-turn 50% increase to critical damage at skill level 10. Team him up with Hans Christian Andersen, and your main attacker will have a heavy-hitting 90% increase to their critical damage. Add in a support Merlin, and, well, unga bunga crit damage for the win. Need to prevent an enemy boss from firing their MP and lower their defense, plus a chance to stun them? Then you want Waver's NP. This one caster support just does so many things that even after nearly 5 years of FGO NA, Waver is still considered among the top tier supports. Simply put, having him in your roster will benefit you in one way or another. If you already have someone like Rhinus or even your own Scotty, then perhaps there is not as much benefit to adding Waver. And I can certainly understand how some may decide to pass on Waver as a choice in those circumstances. However, in my opinion, Waver's overall kit can still significantly benefit those that already have Rhinus or Scotty, or both. You can never have too many 50% MP chargers, especially since more and more we are seeing a trend of hard boss battles that force NPC support on you, like the infamous Demeter battle. Well, that's my top universal pick. Now let's take a look at the choices for each class, starting with Sabers. There are 3 choices for the Saber class, and all of them have AoE MPs: Altera, Artoria, and Mordred. I think each of them have their good points, But out of the three, my recommendation would be Artoria. If you're in need of an AoE Saber, then Artoria has some advantages over the other two. Her MP damage is the highest out of the three, at MP 1. And she will get a buff in July that further increases that MP damage, giving her the highest MP 1 AoE damage calculation at neutral. Artoria can pseudo MP loop with the right setup due to her 20% NP refund that increases with overcharge and her 30% MP battery. And she is very compatible with the future double Koyanskaya of Light system that allows for 3-turn Buster MP looping. Now Mordred is actually very similar to Artoria and is also compatible with the double Koyanskaya system. It's just that Mordred's MP battery has a 6-turn cooldown compared to Artoria's 5-turn cooldown, and this makes a difference with Mystic Code flexibility in the system. But for raw MP damage, currently, and farming ability, then Artoria has the advantage. I've even used her for some challenge content, and with her future buff that allows her to change all of her face cards to Buster, she will have some more tools to help with those types of fights. For archers, there are also 3 choices. The AoE MP wielding Arjuna and Napoleon, along with a single target Orion, Orion's proxy, Artemis. My pick here would be Napoleon, and not just if you are needing an AoE archer. Even if you don't have an SSR single target archer, I don't recommend choosing Orion for the simple fact that much of what Orion Artemis can do, the free 3-star Uriel can do. So then between Arjuna and Napoleon, I feel Napoleon has an advantage with being able to buff the party's attack and MP damage, plus gain critical stars. Napoleon has a 30% MP battery, compared to Arjuna's very awkward 25%. On top of that, Napoleon's MP deals extra damage against divine enemies, which is quite widely applicable. Not to mention, his is more damaging at MP 1, without even counting the anti-divine trait bonus. So if I needed an SSR archer, I would go with Napoleon among the 3. Like the other 2 knight classes, there are 3 lancers to choose from: the single target Enkidu, and the AoE Karna and Bradamante. Now if you happen to need an AoE lancer, then Karna would certainly be a good option, especially if you're looking for potent anti-divine MP damage. On the other hand, Bradamante's kit is fairly well rounded and even brings a targetable 20% NP charge with a debuff removal effect to the table. However, out of the 3, I feel the best option is Enkidu. He has a very powerful single target MP, the highest damaging at MP 1 among ST SSR Lancers, that also has a bonus against the trait Threat to Humanity, along with a 500% chance to stun an enemy with the Divine trait. Enkidu is also a very good solo unit. With a 1-turn evasion on a relatively short 5-turn cooldown, along with a massive 5 to 10,000 HP self-heal that also removes any debuffs. Along with that, one of the main reasons I put Enkidu ahead of the AoE options is because in the very near future, we will get the free 4-star AoE Lancer Utsumi Eris from the Board Game Apocalypse event. So that can cover any AoE Lancer needs, and then having Enkidu will give you a powerful unit for more challenging content. Now for the first of the cavalry classes, Riders, of which there are 4 choices: Achilles, Europa, Ozymandias, and Francis Drake. All of them except for Ozymandias have AoE MPs. So if you're in desperate need of an AoE rider, then I think the 3 choices here are all solid. But if you're looking for a pure farming unit, then Drake would fit the bill, especially with her 50% NP battery. In the future, Drake will also be compatible with the double Koyanskaya of Light system. If you already have Scotty, then Achilles might make more sense with his MP looping potential. He also has other tools that could be useful outside of just pure farming, like having a taunt and a 1-turn invincibility. Europa is similar to Achilles in having a kit that gives her flexibility, with being used in harder battles or in farming. Although she does lack the MP looping potential. Overall, however, I would say that Ozzy is the best general pick among the 4 riders. He has a couple of feature buffs that give him a usable niche and greatly improves his kit. But even before those buffs, he has some very good utility with a party-wide attack buff and a party-wide 20% NP charge. The 20% NP charge for the party is fairly rare to begin with, but it also has the added effect of increasing the buff success rate of the party. His MP seals an enemy's MP for a turn, plus debuffs their defense. So, Ozzy can effectively be your main attacker versus caster class bosses, or a hybrid support secondary attacker in various other battles. For this reason, he is the most appealing to me. And now we come to the casters. I'm going to leave Waver out of this since I already covered him as my universal top pick. That leaves us with 2 AoE NP casters in Anastasia and Scheherazade, 1 single target in San Zhang, and 1 support in Tamamo no Mae. If you're in need of an AoE caster, there are other effective options aside from Anastasia and Scheherazade. We just recently finished the Apocrypha event that provided the welfare 4-star caster Sieg, who himself is an incredible MP arts looper. For players that missed out on that event, then the combination of the free 3-star caster Paracelsus teamed up with the 2-star Cheng Gong can cover a lot of your AoE needs. So then, what about San Zhang? Well, with how limited the options are for single target casters, this makes San Zhang very appealing. And she's a very good unit with an MP battery that scales from 50 to 80%, depending on level, a taunt, party-wide NP gen, and crit star generation buff, plus a party-wide 1-turn debuff immunity. San Zhang also has excellent NP gain with 3 arts cards in her deck to go with that NP gen buff. But then, Tamamo's also quite appealing, especially when considering how well she complements Castoria, providing things that Castoria's kit doesn't, like healing, MP damage up, and cooldown reduction. Even outside of teaming up with Castoria, the variety of things that Tamamo's kit brings to the table keeps her relevant and counted among the top tier support units. She can be quite effective and fun to use within art stall teams. For me, it's actually really close between San Zhang and Tamamo, but ultimately my recommendation would be for San Zhang. Just given how the only currently available free option for a single target caster is Medea, I can easily see many really needing to bolster this aspect of their roster. It's not that Medea is bad per se, it's just that her MP damage is so painfully low. However, if you already have a good caster or alternative like a Berserker or Alter Ego for single target duties, and you don't have any other needs among the SSR choices, then I would seriously recommend Tamamo no Mae to further strengthen your support options. For the assassin class choices, there are just 2. The support-oriented Osaka Behime and the single target MP wielding Jack the Ripper. I feel like Osaka Behime is often forgotten among support units, and she actually has quite a lot going on with her kit. Party-wide crit damage increase, a targetable 20% NP charge with a buff to crit star generation, the ability to remove one enemy's buffs, and a party-wide buff to both quick and buster through her MP. All very useful. She actually makes for a good alternative for a quick support if you don't have your own Scotty. But I feel that's only if you already have someone like Waver as well. So if you don't have Waver and are looking for a support unit, then choose Waver. Which then brings me to my recommendation for assassins, Jack the Ripper. Like Osaka Behime, Jack can also remove one enemy's buffs and debuff them with a reduced crit chance. She also has a targetable heal on a very short 4-turn cooldown for more utility. But Jack's true appeal is in her insane crit star generation and an incredible NP gain rate. Her MP damage is quite good, especially when properly leveraged against females, where she receives a damage bonus. If you're looking for a strong single target assassin, and you don't plan to roll for Kama come June or July, then Jack the Ripper is arguably the next best thing. We now come to the last of the 7 main classes, the Berserkers. And here there are 3 options, each with a different flavor of MP type. Vlad III, a single target arts unit, Zhang Yu, an AoE quick unit, and Nightingale, who has an art support type NP. Nightingale has some useful tools for certain trickier battles, like a targetable debuff immunity, a potent targetable 3-turn buster performance increase, party debuff removal, heals, plus debuffs to enemies' attack and NP damage. But her being a Berserker can be a challenge when it comes to keeping her alive during harder battles, where her kit would be most used. Zhang Yu has a pretty solid kit overall, and he can also become quite the crit damage machine, especially with his latest interlude, which gives him a much needed star absorb effect. But my pick among the 3 is Vlad. And this is very much due to Castoria, and how Vlad will turn into a single target MP looping juggernaut. At least I think he will. Perhaps a better way to put it would be, I expect him to become the single target version of Summer Musashi when teamed up with Castoria. Naturally, a major component to this would be having a Castoria of your own, but even just relying on a support Castoria should still allow Vlad to be very effective. On his own, he can drain an enemy's MP gauge by 1, tied to his MP battery of 30%. He can increase his attack and defense for 3 turns, and increase his own MP generation rate for 3 turns. For a hard defense option, he effectively has 2 guts stacked together. In the future, he will be getting his 3rd NP buff to bring him more in line with the current NP damage modifiers. And in the soon-to-be dominant arts meta, Vlad can be an excellent universal boss killer. For the final 2 choices among the eligible SSRs, we have the ruler class Jeanne d'Arc and the moon cancer Jinako Karigiri. Jinako's kit looks to be an offensive support tank with a self-taunt, damage cut, targetable invincibility, and most notably a party-wide attack buff and 20% NP charge. The biggest issue for Jinako is her AoE MP and its lack of damage. Being a moon cancer, most of the time she will be neutral against enemies. Avengers don't tend to ever show up in groups. Then her main appeal would be her support features, I suppose. But overall, there are other servant options that bring similar support features in arguably more useful classes. So if we're talking about the choice between the 2 extra class options, my pick would be Jeanne d'Arc. Her skills as they currently stand are fairly simplistic and in definite need of buffs. Fortunately, her second skill does get a buff later that improves Jeanne's utility with a 2-layer defense debuff on a target enemy. But ultimately, it's Jeanne's MP that makes her shine. After her MP interlude, she provides a party-wide invincibility for 1 turn, a party-wide defense for 3 turns, a 2-turn HP regen of 1000 to 3000 HP per turn, depending on overcharge, plus a party-wide debuff removal. With this MP, Jeanne works very well within a variety of stall teams. That said, it should be pointed out that Castoria's MP provides a superior version of invincibility and also removes the party's debuffs. So Castoria can effectively play a similar role within stall teams, but with a more effective skill set. Not exactly good news for Jeanne, but it is something to keep in mind if you're seriously considering her for your choice. Now, I'm sure there are many that have been debating between 2 or more servants. I've seen some agonize between a class they need versus a specific servant they want. And most likely, my recommendations didn't actually help in that regard. Recall that my picks were under the context of each class, in isolation, relative to one's potential needs. So, if you're trying to choose between a servant you need and a servant you want, then I say, just choose Waver. Kidding. Generally, I'm of the opinion to go with a servant you like, since that tends to make things more enjoyable. The caveat behind that is to at least ensure there is some sort of alternate plan to deal with your roster needs down the road. I'd be happy to offer my 2 cents if you leave a comment, and perhaps we can discuss some ideas that will make your decision easier. I'll make it a priority to respond to comments over the next few days. Other than that, if you're already firm in your choice, then I would love to hear about it in a comment. Oh, and if you're curious about my choices, for my main account, I've decided on Europa, since she eluded me during her banner, and I really liked her in Olympus. For my alternate account, it will be Jack the Ripper, as I very much want a potent single target assassin, and I don't have plans to roll for Kama on that account. If you enjoyed this video, then please don't forget to hit that like button, and consider subscribing if you haven't already done so. That really helps out with YouTube, Kun. Many thanks for watching, and until the next one, cheers.